you're doing, and what is financial break even and why does it matter. So every farmer must know their financial break even point, and this is when your income exactly equals your production costs. So at this point, you're not making a profit or a loss. You're meeting all your costs, and you're meeting, and what you're getting meets everything. So you're just at the middle, you're just breaking even. So think of it like this: if you plant X numbers of cabbages and you sell them at Y Zambian kwacha each, you must sell, you must be able to sell before you, okay, how many must you be able to sell before you cover all your input costs and stop worrying about your losses? So that's how you should look at it. So let's say you've planted 100 cabbages, or you've stocked maybe 200 chickens. So how much should you sell them at before you cover all your costs? Or how many should you sell to cover all your costs? So this figure is your business survival number. It helps you know how much to plant, how much to spend, and when you're really making a profit. So another way to also be able to calculate your costs, you can go to, for example, in Lusaka, we have livestock services, and you can go to them and you ask the specialist that you want to do a hectare of, for example, say a hectare of cabbage. So they would be able to tell you, oh, in a hectare, you'd need X amount of all these things. Or you go to another place you could go to is a place like Amiran. They would be able to tell you how much you'd need, and you'd be able to get a good figure from examples. Seed suppliers, they would be able to give you rough estimations of things. So for example, cabbage seedlings cost about one kwacha 50 ngwe each. So you'd be able to know, or let's say we say one kwacha, if you're planting 6,000 heads, that's 6,000 kwacha. Then you know, okay, how many bags of fertilizer would you need as your basil dressing? How many would you need as your top dressing? How much chemical are you buying? So once you have all these costs, you would divide them by the number of plants that you have. And then you'd know that, okay, the cost of producing this cabbage, let's say it's 3 kwacha or it's 2 kwacha 15 ngwe. For you to at least make money, you should sell most of your cabbage for at least about 4 kwacha or 5 kwacha if your cost is about 2 kwacha 15 ngwe for each cabbage. So what you need to know before you even begin calculating these costs, you need to understand two types of costs. So you have your fixed costs. These don't change with the output. So for example, let's say you're getting irrigation. The cost of your irrigation is not going to fluctuate because you've already gotten it. The salaries for your permanent workers won't fluctuate. Um, land or lease, or land lease costs won't fluctuate. So you know that. Now, the other costs that are likely to change are your variable costs. So, for example, seedlings, the cost of seedlings could change. The cost of fertilizer, manure, pesticides, electricity, casual labor, your transport costs, all these things are variable costs. So they change depending on how much you produce. So all these factors can change. So to calculate your break-even points, your break-even point, sorry, would be, your break-even is your total fixed costs divided by your selling price minus your variable costs. So in the notes there is an example, and for example, a hectare of cabbage. So this is just an example. A hectare of cabbage, the total population is 40,000 heads. So your target price is 7 kwacha per head. And then your variable cost is cost per head is 3 kwacha 15 gwe. So you'd multiply this 3 kwacha 15 gwe by the number of heads, and then you'd do your formula. So that is written in the example, and then it would tell the answer that you get will give you how many number of heads of cabbage, or how many numbers of whatever you're doing, just to cover all your costs. So let's say in that hectare, for you to cover all your costs, you need to sell about let's say 20,000 heads of cabbage. Then the remaining is what you'd make as a profit. So you can look at it like that. So what if the price drops? So let's say if the price falls, so you'd know that um at this point you'd be able to check, okay, would we make money, would we not make money? So the most important thing in this entire formula is to manage your costs. um Managing your costs can also be a challenge, especially for things that you've got completely no control over. So sometimes you find inputs are very expensive, so you can find means of producing the same good quality but a lower cost, whether you're going to use more manures but you're not compromising quality, because the cost of cutting costs comes at a cost. So I know I've gone through this example very quickly, but the formula is in your notes, and you'd be able to use this with whatever you try to grow, factoring transportation costs and all the costs that you have. So that as the more you grow, you kind of know the cost of growing something, the cost of doing a certain line of production. The time we started fish farming, with all the factors involved, I knew that the lowest amount of fish we should stock, the lowest amount of population of fish we should stock is about 6,500 fish. And just looking at where we are located and all the factors of production involved, so we know that below 6,500 we are not going to make anything. So 6,500 was practically our break even point. So for everything you do, kind of know the minimum you should start with to at least start making money. So you can really consult a lot of places, whether you're going to buy seed from somewhere, fertilizer from a different place. Just have that habit of consulting, figuring out all your costs, and just playing around with the formulas, and you'd be able to have an idea. So, knowing break even protects you from market shocks. It also helps you decide whether to sell now, delay, or find a better buyer. But with perishables, there's nothing like sell later. You just have to sell because you have no choice but to sell. But for things where, for example, you have you can wait, like when we have things like our, what do you call this, when we have things like our grains, you can wait a bit and say no, you wait for the market price to get better. So that's okay. So for those joining in now, I sent notes in the group, and just towards the end of the notes there was something under break even. So just getting to know your costs and all the things that are involved with your costs. So how to lower your break even point? So one could be buy your inputs in bulk, or through cooperatives, or through a group of people. So let's say we decided in this group that, okay, we're going to form a cooperative, and in our cooperative would help each other get inputs at a much lower price, because we're buying like a group of us. So the wholesaler, the basically the sellers would give us at wholesale price because we're getting in bulk. So even apply fertilizers and water effectively and efficiently. So maybe use of drip irrigation, especially with crops that you can use drip irrigation. Then another example would be not wasting of your inputs, and then improve plant survival and yields. So this is through proper spacing, pest control, and all the things that are required to improve your yields. So trying to sell during high price months and then plan your harvest dates. So planning, timing, and knowing all of that market intelligence in advance, and then cut avoidable costs like fuel overuse, overbuying of certain things that you don't need to do, maybe overspraying or over applying inputs. You can try and see if you can add value, you can clean, you can do pre-orders, but that just depends on what you're trying to do. And why does this matter for your business? Many small scale farmers produce without even knowing if they're making real profit. So the break even point just helps you set the price, have an idea of your costs, plan how much to plant, understand what you can afford, understand what you can't afford, whether what you want to do is doable. It helps you avoid, panic selling where you just sell because you're in a rush. Like, for example, before the maize price was announced, farmers already started selling, and obviously, most people were trying to manage costs and all of those things involved. And then it also helps you negotiate better, especially if you're trying to supply a supermarket. You know your cost. You're not kind of like guessing, like, oh, maybe I should. Maybe you just say, oh, 8 kwacha is a good price. So you have the idea. So it's a lot about your farm. It's about numbers. So knowing your numbers is key. So knowing your break even helps you prove your profitability to banks, to your funders, to your partners. So the break even point is practically the survival line of your business. And through a lot of what we were talking about in the last lessons, we were talking about how there are people who feel like their business is not making money, certain things aren't moving well, and you would have that notion that your business isn't doing well and you're not making money, but you also, again, don't really know your numbers, you don't really know your costs, you don't really know the cost of production to produce maybe one chicken, one cabbage, that kind of thing, or to produce a hectare of tomatoes or a box of tomato. You kind of don't know the cost. And the time when we used to grow a lot of green beans, we would quantify a lot of what we were doing. So from, let's say, a line, because green beans would harvest twice a week. So we'd say, okay, how many kgs are we getting from a single line? How many kgs are we getting in the entire field? That kind of gives us an idea. And even as we estimate costs, even when we do our projections, we know that, okay, for green beans, your first harvest, um, it's moderate, then it reduces, then it goes into a phase where it just goes into a surge, and you produce even more than you produced the first time you did your first picking, and then you'd be picking continuously, so it goes into a surge. So you kind of know that, okay, when we're doing our projections, when we're about to supply the supermarkets, this is the quantity that we have, this is the forecast. So you actually do a forecast for the entire business, you have a plan. And then knowing the key takeaway is that profit starts after break even and not at harvest. So when you know your break even point, you know that, okay, after we've harvested 200 cabbages and we have a total of 1,000, from 300 cabbages we are now making money. So you aim to sell more and spend less per unit. So as you are doing your farming, your mind is focused on getting good yields while you're doing it at a reasonable cost, and you're managing all of that. So always track your numbers before and during production. use break even to plan, to monitor, and also to negotiate. So there are a few calculations, there are a few ways you can calculate and just play around, whether this is for livestock, whether this is for vegetables. It will basically give you an idea of everything that would be very beneficial and very important for you to know. So, um, on the top of that, there's a vegetable crop calendar and market intelligence for Zambia. And I won't go through the timing for everything, but I want to go through because I think this is important. So, market intelligence strategy, um, and this is for vegetables. And this is number one is know your market entry time. So avoid harvesting during periods of when the market is in full supply. So, like I've always been emphasizing, talk to the people in the market. One model I came to appreciate. So, I am currently in Eswatini but returning to Zambia. I'm doing my research on market structures across Africa and what is working. And one market structure I found very interesting and very useful. And I was thinking if such a model could be done in Zambia, I think farmers could plan better. So they have the National Agriculture Monitoring Board, I mean Marketing Board, sorry. And what they do is they buy vegetables from farmers as well as chickens from farmers. So they'll come and they have extension officers who tell you the varieties to plant. They will buy everything. They even have a delivery truck that will pick up the produce from your farm if you cannot take it to their depot. They'll tell you the prices every week. You're updated with the prices. And when the market is crashing, because there are a lot of imports from South Africa, they'll close the borders so that their farmers have a better deal in terms of the market. So I was thinking, if we had such a system in Zambia, they'll tell you all the vegetables they buy. So you can imagine market structures that support our production. In Zambia, you kind of just produce what you feel like you can produce, or if you have a bit of market intelligence, you try. But if you are sure that this product you're growing will be bought, you have a rough estimation of your costs. Even if the prices reduce, you can even diversify your product lines so that you don't struggle too much. So, a lot of these farmers know that what they'll grow will be bought by Nambod, and Nambod will onboard you into the system. They'll pay you after a week. So if you're supplying them weekly, you're getting your money weekly. After you supply, they'll tell you what grade your produce was and all of those things. So it's a very formal market system which is supporting farmers everywhere. So I'm kind of trying to understand market systems. So what are some of the things that can work for us in Zambia? I think that would be a good model if they ever decided to do something like that. But let's just see with what we have. Um, for example, chain stores, it's consistent supply, quality supply, and quantity. Hotels and restaurants, very good target areas. Online, you can do online where you just supply households. Sometimes if I was much closer to the market, I would probably do vegetable packages. We have a man in our area. He makes very beautiful grass baskets for as low as 20 kwacha. Extremely beautiful. So I would factor the cost of the basket in the package, that every time you get the produce from me, this beautiful grass basket, and they're very nice large baskets. I don't know if I have pictures of them. I'll share. And I would put the vegetables in good quantities, fresh, washed, target health clubs, especially even during marathons. That's something I would think of if I was much closer, especially people who want to watch their weight. You see, there are lots of run clubs, contact the group owners for the run clubs that you actually supply vegetables, the prices. People are trying to get healthy now. So that would be my target. The gyms, talk to the gym trainers. If you want, even tell gym trainers you'd be able to give them discounts on their fresh produce. Actually, that's actually a good idea. But yeah, that's where my mind is thinking. If I was much closer, smaller quantities, that's something I would do and target. And you'd have like a consistent, because people's taste is changing. People like the finer things. So even niche products like fresh herbs, that kind of thing, because people are now having that acquired taste. So just thinking beyond. So export window for regional trade. So there are opportunities for things like dry onions. The Congo market is also very good. And then you can also do price monitoring. There are WhatsApp groups with prices for all the markets across Zambia. And if you'd like, you can be following the prices daily and just observe. Especially now that we're entering into summer, I'll look for a group that shares market prices, and we just all observe these prices over a period of time, and you have an appreciation of prices. So another smart thing to do is stagger whatever you're doing, whether it's your chickens. I know I think we also spoke about this with with everybody in the first lessons, which was stagger your planting into intervals, so you stretch it over a longer period. And cold chain planning. So sorry, in terms of staggering, what I meant is you stagger your planting every 2 weeks, planting every week, planting every day if you have the space for it and the market to absorb it every day. And then cold chain planning for tomatoes, lettuce, and greens. So you plan dry season irrigation, of course, the likes of drip, and then collaborate, join. For example, we have our National Farmers Union joining a district farmers association group, seeing what opportunities are present. um, you can collaborate with the seed people, leverage off support. You can also ask to do demos on your farm for seed companies, try out. They're happy to do demos. They're happy to just collaborate with you as a farmer. Record and analyze. So take every batch. So this is planting dates, inputs, harvests, yield, price, all of these things, and then you just have a feel of it. So there's also a bit where I did on elaborate record keeping. I think we kind of spoke about how to keep records, but I've also put a more detailed version of it. So in the last lesson we talked of records. So a huge chunk of our last lesson is actually this booklet, and you have a better appreciation. So track your farm expenses, your income, profitability. So compare performance across different crops and seasons. So those are the benefits of your record keeping. So types of records to keep: you can keep a farm activity log. So you record your planting. You can have a book for your planting. You can have a spray book. So I have a spray book which has the dates, the amount of water we are diluting, the chemicals in, um, the field we've sprayed because we've labeled. I know I'm supposed to send you a sketch of my farm, which I'll do. Maybe I'll just see how I can generate it instead of drawing it. It might not be as neat. Um, then irrigation, you can have a log for it, and harvesting, you can have a harvest book. So our harvest book would write the name of the harvester, what they are harvesting at that particular time, how many kilos, the cost of whatever they've harvested. So even when we were packaging a lot of green beans, we knew the cost of each packet, the cost of picking, the cost of packing. So even as we were coming up with these costs, it wasn't just haphazard. We would know that the cost of producing and packing a small packet of beans is 2 kwacha it would come to about 2 kwacha 70 ngwe. Then we were only selling at around 4 kwacha something. And then there was a point that our packaging, because when we were supplying the chain stores, packaging, we used to buy packaging from them. So when they would increase the packaging, it would automatically increase our cost of production. And when we calculate that inputs are going up, packaging is going up, we knew our cost and would be like, what we're doing now is we're practically just running the cycle. So we kind of had to see, is this still making sense for us to continue doing it like this? So that's when you'd know all your costs. So it starts, it's actually the foundation of actually knowing your break even costs and knowing all your costs starts at keeping your records. So it starts with what you're doing in terms of record keeping. So input inventory, quantity of seed that you have, fertilizer that you have, chemicals, packaging, whatever it is, you have an inventory of that. You have your labor records. We talked of this. So all of this is written. Harvest records, sales records, expenses records. Let me not go into this because we did that. So I also shared the Excel sheet which you can use if you want, and you have other businesses. You are still free to change the titles and whatnot. You can still use that. So use separate pages or sheets for each crop that you're trying to do. Don't try and mix everything, just try and separate it. You can use codes to track seasons. So there's an example, and then you can see ways that you can store all of this information. And then tools you can use, so notebooks, very affordable. The Excel, we also have different packages people are coming up with, so that also helps. So vegetable farming or farming in general becomes more profitable and more efficient with good record keeping, and it turns what you're doing from guesswork into being a business, into being measurable, in being it being you being able to track your goals and performance of your business. So whether you're growing okra, keeping chickens, records are the foundation of knowing your costs. So you get better with time, especially if you do your records even more often. So, how do you position yourself to make money from your vegetables? So, making profitable decisions requires you to basically understand market economics, production efficiencies, as well as risk management. So, position yourself um, strategically so that you're able to make sustainable and profitable enterprises. So you have to understand market demand, you have to understand your consumer preferences. So identify all your buyers. There was someone I met who was talking about diversifying all their buyers. So for whatever they had, they were growing. They listed everybody, they listed all their markets. So how many of us can list at least, we've diversified our markets so much that whether this one doesn't buy to go here, whether this one doesn't buy to go there. So diversify your markets as much as you want. Shamelessly approach different places with your product. Just continue to knock on doors. And that's how it is. That's how you get your markets. So um price elasticity. So some vegetables are highly volatile. So like our vegetable market in Zambia is highly volatile, especially tomato. And what do I mean by volatility? The prices just fluctuate. And learn when, like I've been overemphasizing, when know when it peak, when the market is at peak, demand is at peak, and supply is very tight. So you know that during the festive season, prices always shoot up because of a lot of what is going on. So understand consumer trends. And right now, the trend is healthy food, keeping healthy, being fit, eating well, you know. So those are things. Then choose high value and locally adapted crops. So opt for vegetables that have a higher value, but they can be grown in Zambia. It's quite difficult to grow, for example, your broccoli in Zambia, especially when it's not in a greenhouse or in the cold season. Today I was in a very beautiful broccoli field. The farmer knew their market. They had a market. They were not just growing or doing guesswork. They were showing me everywhere where the market, they know their supply days, their harvest days. They're even told that the maximum you can bring per harvest day is 200 kg of each crop. You have enough space, enough land, you are able to project. So that's the direction Zambian agriculture should go, that even when farmers are producing, even when we are looking for markets, we have products that people can grow. They have the right technical support, they have all the right information to meet the demand, to meet the standard. When we talk about standards, when we talk about traceability, especially in our agriculture, not to say anything bad, but we are quite behind in terms of how we do a lot of management activities. I mean, we do put regulations, but just the enforcement. And as part of this training, I'll also share on the notes are in this same document on global gap in terms of how you can improve your traceability. And this is where it differentiates us to actually compete at an international level or whether it's a regional level. I'm telling you, a lot of what we produce in Zambia cannot even enter the South African market. South African farmers and farmers just down in this area, they follow global gap. They have global gap compliance. So before they supply chains, so whatever they produce can actually compete on the international market. The chemicals they're not supposed to use. Glyphosate has been banned in a lot of countries, but in Zambia, glyphosate is still on the shelves. So there are a lot of products that have been banned, and countries that are following these standards. I know products from Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, Lesotho, Eswatini can compete on a global level because they follow the global gap regulations. So I know that there are few farmers who do follow the global gap regulations in terms of the practices and are global gap certified. So in a lot of these countries, it's a compliance. No matter how small you are, it's just a way of compliance that you have to comply to these standards. So if we could be thinking in that direction of how do we comply with international standards, there's the Africa Free Trade thing that where we would be able to trade around Africa tax free. And if we want to compete in that whole tax free thing, minus the Kasumbalesa market kind of logistics, and want to compete at a regional level, we have to really be compliant. So, anyway, that's just something that's been on my mind. But I have talked about a number of things that you can begin to just get to that level, because at the end of the day, we want to be agribusiness owners, leaders that can compete at a global level, that can compete at that level. I'll look for videos. I think I had saved them on my drive. I don't know if I deleted them. That give you an appreciation of our packaging house, from the receiving bay, from where you wash your hands, how many sinks we have, just the layout, so that when you're thinking of if it's a pack house, an idea of how to construct your pack house. So we were trained by Global Gap in 2021 under the World Bank. So that level of compliance, we still have it. We still try our best to follow it. So another thing is also finding niche products to grow. So local vegetables are also a good way, especially off season, the likes of Wondwe, Lumanda, Chihuahua. In the off season where we're headed October, these are quite difficult to grow, but in the rain season they grow very wildly. So that wouldn't be a good option. So risk diversification is key. So grow a wide range of things and just diversify your portfolio of what you grow. Then understand in your value chain. So we talked about value chains in our last lesson. Understand where you can add value, whether it's grading, whether it's processing, whether it's access to better markets. Just understand where to diversify your portfolio. So before we continue to the next part of this, I just wanted to know if there are any questions or any contributions. The floor is open. Please share. Okay, I will share links for these groups with prices. I'll just check. I was in a number of groups last year. I'll just check if which group is still actively updating. I will share. But the floor is open. Please share anything you'd like to share or anything you'd like to ask before I move on to the next lesson. But the notes that I've sent are very detailed in terms of most of the lessons that we're about to cover. But the floor is open. Do we have any hands? Okay, I'll continue. So anyone who joined in late, it's basically the notes that are in the group. Let me just go back to the notes, and you'll be able to have a feel of all of this. Let me go to what I was talking about for global gap and what global gap is. So global gap is basically a certification um, which allows you to supply international markets. It's just a game changer for your business. You'll be able to tap into export markets, you'll be able to tap into other markets, and it's for crop and livestock, so it's different compliance, and they're just different pillars of this, so you can certify under various scopes. So fruit and vegetables, you can also do livestock, plant propagation material, and integrated farm assurance for mixed farms. So for global gap, it is a certification that you can get, and it's structured under four pillars. So the pillar goal is food safety, safe food production from farm to table, environmental sustainability, where you're protecting soil, water, and biodiversity. Another pillar goal is workers' health and safety, fair treatment, training, and protection of workers. So under this one of the things that they requested was that at all the points where we have toilets on the farm, there should be a tap where they can wash their hands at the toilets. Um, they also look at the location of your toilets on the farm, and also, when you're putting a toilet, where your water source is, it shouldn't be too close. You don't want that contamination. And but it's a must. Workers' toilets, that is a must, and where they wash hands, especially where food handling is concerned. Training of your workers, training of your staff, that is very, very important. And animal welfare, humane treatment of animals, and under your care. So a lot of what I observed in European agriculture, animal welfare is the core of everything that they do. In the United Kingdom, it's illegal to feed, for example, you have cows, and let's say you have tomatoes that are rotting. You can't feed rotten tomatoes to an animal or to your chickens. That is illegal. You can actually get arrested for that. Whatever you can't eat yourself, why are you feeding it to animals? But that's only in the United Kingdom. So even that thing for crop residues, none of that. You cannot feed animals that. You know how we handle livestock, beating animals, you can't. How we slaughter chickens, cutting the neck, that is not allowed. So all of these things they have to see all of these processes. So then we have the major control points. So in terms of compliance, there's major musts. So these, if they find that you don't have them on the farm, you will not be able to get it. Then there's minor musts that okay, 95% is required, even if it's not up to par, it's still okay. And then you also have recommendations. They are not mandatory but encouraged. So, for example, crop production requirements, the site history, and farm layout. And that's why I've been emphasizing that you need to have your farm layout. What is the design of your farm? What is the layout of your farm? So they'll ask, they'll do a risk assessment on soil contamination, previous land use, flood risk, maps of the fields. So all of these things that we've been talking about in terms of building your agribusiness. So the goal is to build businesses that are credible to support to supply international markets that are a standard or a standard of excellence. So all of these things are important. So documented soil testing. You're doing a soil test. It's documented. What is in your soil? What have you been putting in your soil? Practices that prevent soil erosion. Are you planting cover crops? Are you doing minimum tillage where you are potholing, or maybe you get a reaper? So a reaper is just an implement added to the tractor. You don't do major plowing. It just rips into the soil and rips some lines into your soil. So aside from that, fertilizer use. So you record all your fertilizers, records. So in terms of competing globally, you need to have your records in place. So obviously sometimes we're not able to get all of this to standard, but we have to have the standard in our mind, and we have to understand what we're building to get to the point of that global recognition of where we're going. So it's important to have records. So no untreated human waste. So I grew up in Botswana. I used to live in Botswana, and we had this neighbor who used to grow Chinese cabbage. So at 16 hours every single day, they had a swimming pool, and that swimming pool was emptied. And when that pool was emptied, all the water from the sewage, they would pump it into the swimming pool, and from the swimming pool, they would I don't know what technology they were using, but they would now use that water to irrigate the vegetables. They had huge red cabbages, big cabbages, watered with sewer, their sewer. So you can imagine how that was. And people would be rushing and buying vegetables, not knowing the kind of water that was used to grow their vegetables. So that's another thing you have to take into mind. So storage in secure ventilated areas with secondary containment. So even when these global gap certifiers came to the farm, they went through the storeroom, how we were storing things. So they advised for, and what they liked was that our where we store the chemicals, it was metal shelves. So these metal shelves were able to wipe them down. But if you have something like wood, you can't wipe it. If anything spills, you can't wipe it. We separated everything that we use. Crop protection to all the shelves were labeled, everything was labeled. They just encourage that our floor should be a floor that we can mop. So if anything happens, we can easily mop the floor, opposed to a floor that you shine, or a concrete floor. So those were some of the things when they entered into the storage area. So that's why I said that in your farm planning, look for, have an office, have a storeroom, And just have these things in mind as you are doing your plan. So, pesticide and chemical use. Only use registered products for the specific crop in your country, what that country requires. We have a lot of products on the Zambian market, and some of which aren't even allowed, especially in terms of our own health, and which are actually supposed to be banned, but we're still using them in Zambia. Another thing, proper training. So even the people who are doing your crop protection, spraying in the fields, have proper training, know how to spray, know how to operate things. Protective gear, boots, work suits, masks, all of these are important. Chemical storage away from food, away from your water source, and away from livestock. So we have a toxic corner on the farm, and it's a pit that we've designated where we discard all our bottles, and we choose to burn them. So identify an area on your farm, especially if you'll be using chemicals, that is your toxic corner, your toxic pit. And they'll ask about this: where do you dispose of your chemical bottles? If you're not careful, you'll find that the worker will get a chemical bottle, wash it. They'll use it for chiwanto, or putting water. And these are things that we see. A 5 liter container has now been turned into a storage, into a water container. Another person was talking of how the chemical bottle for glyphosate was turned into a salt cellar. So find ways to contaminate your to dispose of contaminated products, anything expired. Find a way to do that. Then also do irrigation and water quality. Most places do test your water quality to know what's in your water, and that is very important. And they also test microbial activity, microbial contamination. That's why your toilet actually shouldn't be close to your line of water. And then drip irrigation is preferred for water efficiency, especially if whatever you can do can use drip. That is what is preferred. And then harvest and post harvest handling. Clean and sanitize harvest tools and containers must be cleaned. Harvesters are trained hygienic practices. Like I told you, especially when we're packaging, before you enter our pack house, you wash your hands. There's a locker room. We have where you wash your hands. So we also have hair nets. They leave their clothes in the changing room. There are also aprons that they also wear, so that even if they put the beans on the laps or whatever it is on their laps, it is one of our aprons that is used. Then we also have a hand dryer, so you dry your hands, an electric hand dryer, and we just make sure that hygiene is managed. So when we're operating the pack house, any person that has a child is not allowed to work in the pack house. They can do harvesting, but if they have a child, they cannot work in the pack house, because even just the environment. And also, if the child urinates in your pack house, you're handling food. That is the quickest way to get contamination. The mother maybe is cleaning the child has messed themselves up, and that's in your pack house. Or maybe they are wiping the child's mucus plus touching food, wiping. So, all of these things, the hygiene is very, very key. There are other places that before you enter the pack house, you actually have to take a shower. So, that's another thing. Then, produce is packed in and stored in clean, ventilated areas. The cold chain is maintained. So even we have a small cold room. The temperature is maintained. So even how the roof, the structure of the roof, rather the ceiling, and then we put an air conditioning at about um, 4 degrees. So that's almost like it's freezing. Actually, not for 4 is very cold. Like at about 12 degrees. So that's not frozen. That's very chilled. So, workers' health and safety and welfare is very important. Provision of clean drinking water, toilets, rest areas, places they can rest, places they can sit, use of protective clothing, formal contracts, fair wages, fair working hours, no child labor, no forced labor, and then training records for all staff involved in pesticide, machinery, having a first aid kit, having a fire extinguisher. So in our Chigayo, we have a fire extinguisher. So even when they came, these were some of the things that they were checking on and checking for. So have that in mind. Then traceability and record keeping. Each product must be traceable from the seed to harvest to the buyer. So labeling, so on your field, you label your field. It should show the variety, the date it planted the field, that it is. So let's say, like I told you, divide your farm in blocks, label your whatever you do. So we actually used to label our lines with whoever planted, so would know this one planted this line. Let's say it is Esther who planted 5 lines. So all these 5 lines, they'll be marked as Esther's. And in Esther's lines, we know when she's weeded, when she's not weeded for management purposes, when she's not harvested properly. We were doing this for management purposes, but in the end, we found that we were actually building traceability. We know who's packed this, what seed is it. You're able to track it. So to the point that you'd put codes on your vegetables. You'd know that this vegetable was packed with this code. This code belongs to this worker. So this is this worker's batch. You're able to trace it because you keep records of the seeds, you keep records of the chemicals you've used. You have a good traceability, you have a good record. So, record keeping isn't just in terms of getting finances, but it also helps in terms of getting international compliance that you can supply international markets. So, all records must be kept for at least 2 years. So, you're building your track record. And then there's environmental sustainability. So this is efficient water use. We talked of this drip irrigation, rainwater harvesting. I visited a farm last week in Lesotho, and the farm owner was harvesting rainwater, and that rainwater was used to um, wash the chicken house, used to irrigate the vegetables. So you can construct a reservoir. The only challenge is when it's October, you have higher rates of evapotranspiration with rain harvesting. So soil cover, which is mulching, intercropping, very important. You have agroforestry and biodiversity conservation. Non-chemical weed control methods are preferred, and then you encourage use of pollinator-friendly habitats. So this is basically, if you're doing things like strawberries, you need pollinators. So you find what can you use to help your flowers produce fruits. So even for your tomatoes, anything that produces that has flowers. Then auditing and certification process. So gap assessment, you can do a self check or a check with a consultant, and then you implement all the required practices. Then you can actually choose a certification body. Then you undergo an audit, and you do an initial and annual surveillance audit, and then address anything that has a challenge. And then after you've cleared everything, you will receive your global gap number. So on the notes, I've put the global gap site, so you can do globalgap.org. And then for resource tools and implementation, you can they are extension agents. So I used to create agricultural information on a platform called Agri, and they're now building their website. So a lot of farm short tips are there as well. And then you can also try and partner with cooperatives or off-takers who support smallholder certification. And you can also find out from the Zambia National Farmers Union in terms of global gap certification. So benefits of global gap, like I mentioned, gives you access to premium export markets, premium markets, the European Union, and also South African supermarkets. And the benefits, it helps with better farm documentation, professionalism. You'd have improved food safety, reduced health risks, and you also attract funding or offtake agreements with buyers. And because you're global gap certified, it could also help you diversify your product lines in case a market wanted you to do another product. So it also helps position your farm as climate smart and a sustainable agri business. So before I proceed, I would like to know if there are any questions as we are still on the regulation bit, and then I proceed so that I'm not the only one just talking and being repetitive. I don't know if anyone has any questions before Sorry, I was logged out. But before I begin, do we have any hands up? Okay. Um, Madam Rasul, the floor is open.
Thank you so much. Good evening. And
Mm,
I appreciate that you pronounced my name correctly at a go.
thank you.
I just want to take you back a little bit to the point that you mentioned when you were talking about the farmer who was your neighbor in Botswana, and they used sewer waste for their manure, I think.
Yes.
Is it prohibited? Is it a bad thing? Or it's in the similar context as compost?
Well, for some markets, it's okay. When you just think about it, ethically, it just feels very wrong. But it's not, I would say it's not like it's refused, but there are just certain markets that just don't like it. And I think when people discover that that's the kind of water that is being used or the kind of manure being used, there's kind of that resistance. But in other places, there's nothing wrong. It's used and it's what a lot of people are actually doing. Some actually clean the water and use it to irrigate. So it just depends on the market.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, do we have any more hands up before I continue? Okay, so let me just go back to the notes, and we are still on the global gap and just the importance in terms of competing at a global level. There are major musts. So these are non-negotiables. You have to 100% comply. And I was with a farmer last week, and I was seeing all their certificates in terms of compliance, and there are so many of them. And others say to them, compliance feels like it's just a solution that they have to buy, that it's a problem caused, and they have to pay for that solution. But in the larger sense, it gives them access to several markets. So that's just the way, even if you don't get the global gap, but you're building to get to that standard. So traceability, like we've been talking about, all your fields must be labeled, or everything on the farm must have those labels. Daily logs of input use, harvest activities, staffing training, everything must be traceable. The farm map, so farm layout, like I mentioned, we've divided every area into blocks, field names. We know block 1A, block 2A, block 3B, block 4. So I know if I'm talking about block 4, I know in block 4 there's the orchard, the chicken house, and a part of the area that we've not cultivated in a long time. Block 2A, I know that that's where, I don't know if people have been following on Facebook, I showed a video where I was setting up a drip irrigation. So that is block 2. So I know, oh, block 2, I'm talking about where we've just planted winter maize. So that just gives you an idea. And then there's more details on handling, washing. So there are more details on that. I think in terms of global gap, we've covered the most important things. What is at the bottom now is just greater detail. And when you just read these notes, it's basically a foundation for successful vegetable farming in terms of knowing your numbers, why it's important, knowing your farm size, and everything that you need to know. So when you have time, you can actually go through these notes. And then, like we've been talking about, understanding your farm's location actually plays a huge role in determining your crop capacity or production capacity. And I think I've kind of covered this or emphasized this a lot, because once you know where you're located, you know how much you can grow, you know your limits, and you know your starting point. So I think a lot of what is on this beginning is stuff that we covered in the first few lessons. So I think there are some notes which were missing, but everything is actually in this booklet. And I think I can just briefly, let me just go back to what we had also listed. So just give me a moment. Yeah, just give me a moment. But if anyone has a question, also an input, or maybe there's some practices that they do on their farms that you'd like to share, please just feel free to share. So, okay. We did do the break even point. So, a little exercise you can do, or maybe if there's anyone planning stuff. Okay, so let me just um lesson. I'm going to write on the lesson outline so maybe people can see what I'm referring to. So I've just labeled it as lesson outline. I've just texted that in the group. So here we're looking at money management. There's actually specific notes on money management that I'll also share to just help, especially for the starting point. And let me just see, because we will soon be winding up, and I hope these little assessments, people have been doing them. On our graduation day, we are actually going to have just little awards and small prizes for people that actually do manage to do the assessments. So we've covered the break even point today. We've known when we're making a profit. We've elaborated on record keeping, which is in the notes. Cash flow management. Let me just see what else I can share with you all. So I have a lesson on money management, which is very detailed in terms of money management in agribusiness. Okay, kindly reshare. Wasn't in the group. Okay, so that will be reshared. Um, Anyway, I have some notes on money management that I'll share with you all. Just a moment. Mm, mm, okay, sorry, just give me a minute. Okay, I think the money management notes aren't with me right now, but I will share them with you. And basically, it's just how you manage your finances, and a very simple way that I would also do management of finances is that, for example, there's a time I was selling fresh maize. I would keep envelopes for every sale. So I would keep an envelope where I would put money for airtime, an envelope where I would put for fuel. Depending on how much I've made, I would do a breakdown and then keep money for the next cycle. So I would know my transport costs. So I would remove for transport for the next time we take to the market. So those are ways, and I would separate the money into small, small envelopes. And this I have this small safe, so that would help. So that would actually help. I would love to see what type of information you capture in some of your record books. If you can capture some blank pages. Okay, so I'll be home on Friday. I can take a picture of some of my record books. Yeah, I can take a picture of some of my record books. I can show you from crops. I can show you from labor, harvest books, even just the assorted files. I would be able to just show you roughly how we do it, and that would just give you a very good and clear picture of how you can also do it. So I'll be able to share that on Friday. um Let me just get back to the other notes that we were going through. So yes, this one, I think, um these notes that were just shared today is very, very detailed, and you'd be able to know everything that you need to know. And let me there's something that I think is important. So in the same notes, I've also put formulation of spray programs for those who want to use chemicals. So that is also just listed, but that's a very long lesson which I don't think we should do today. But let me just scroll up and see what else is very important for you all to know. Um, mm, so we can just, before we get the last questions or any inputs, we can look at basically enterprise planning. And so, with your planning for whatever you do, it begins with selecting suitable crops for your area, for your land, for whatever you want to do. So, whether it's getting your soils tested, no, there's a actually the best soil testing company which commercial farmers use at the moment is a company called Crop Nuts. I'll look for their contact and share it with you. Crop Nuts is currently the best soil testing fertilizer. We have been doing most of our soil tests with fertilizer companies, but with consultation with different farmers, those in the commercial space, they actually recommend crop nuts. So first things first, test your soils. What can be grown? How do you improve your soils? So it's essential that you plan a calendar. So the bottom of these notes has the cropping calendar, and you can also just use that to plan. And your land preparation should be based on your expected plant dates, your harvest dates. Know when you're going to plant, know when you're going to harvest. Because right now, in the month that we are in, whatever we are planting starting from August, any long term production that determines our 2027 harvest. So you do your resource mapping, which includes your inputs, so your seeds, your fertilizers, your human capital, everything available to use, your budget estimates, so project the quantities of everything. So really enterprise planning is just knowing exactly what you need, your risk plan contingency in the event of an unexpected drought. So even if we get insurance, understand what insurance actually covers. You can be paying for insurance and then they tell you, oh, actually this insurance plan doesn't cover, for example, it doesn't cover drought, or it doesn't cover this issue that you've presented. So even as we talk of insurance, insure your crop, insure what, find out what that insurance actually covers to avoid you wasting of any resources. So plan everything that you need to plan in terms of risk. We spoke of this water. You do a water needs assessment. Actually, I didn't actually talk of this. So because water is the most important factor for successful vegetable farming, even with livestock, you need to know water. So you must assess your water available, whether it's a well or stream. Just see how much water you need. You can also try and see how much farmers should calculate the approximate daily water needs per plant or per chicken, per cow, per goat, whatever it is, and then plan accordingly. So planning is just the heart of everything that we need to do. And we talked of labor requirements, the skills required. So I don't know if you open the last notes, there was also a contract. There was something on HR, a draft contract for a farm manager, a draft contract for a farm worker. So all of that was included. And then I think a lot of these things is quite repetitive. Record keeping. So the basis of everything we do is records. It's planning and just knowing what to do, when to do it, how to do it, why we should do it, and just integrating everything that we need to know. So there was another bit where someone was talking of soils. I think that was on our first lesson. There's someone who spoke of soils, and on these notes there is soil, and you'll be able to have an understanding of the types of soils that are found in Zambia, how to work with difficult soils. So we can talk about this now. So when you test your soils, you need to know, do you have acidic soils or do you have soils that are highly alkaline? And are there ways to improve your soils? Yes, there are. If your soils are too acidic, you add if your oils if sorry if your soils are too alkaline, you add gypsum. But if your oils are too acidic, you lime your soils. So these are some things to know. If you're in a situation where you have sandy soils, where you are it's a lot of sand, you compost your soils, build compost, add compost manure. You gradually and continuously improve your soils. So the soil is what you're able to work with, and how you can improve it is through a lot of compost, through a lot of adding manure. Then you are able to manage your soils. So knowing what's in your soils, testing your soils, also just prevents you from overuse of chemicals. As we've been talking about budgeting, the break-even point, if you test your soils, you know that, oh, you won't just be applying fertilizers. One thing I can tell you all is that as you get into your businesses, as you get into whatever you're doing, The tricky part or the difficult bit is that there are people who will be selling you products because they are trying to meet sales targets. They need to offload a whole bunch of products. Some things you will not need them, but they'll try sell them to you. So know what exactly you need for your farm, and you learn this over time, but you definitely make mistakes of buying certain things that you don't need. So the more you plant, the more you plan, the more you do your farming activities, you know what you need and what you don't need for your farm. So we have fertilizers in all kinds of forms, whether it's granular, liquid fertilizers, water soluble. So all of these notes are written in your, everything is written in your notes, and you just have to take a bit of time to read them. And you can tell, you'll be looking and observing your, whether it's plants or your animals. When you observe them every morning, you can get someone to scout. They just go through different lines, they pick leaves that look diseased, whether it's diseased or they're yellowing. You know that, oh, are they yellowing, do they need a particular chemical, are they purpling? If they're becoming purple, you know that, okay, they are lacking phosphorus. If their leaves have yellow margins in the stems, they are lacking potassium. So you kind of know. However, again, diseases can also be mixed up with nutrient deficiency. So over time, you actually become even more experienced than agronomists as the farmer, because you're dealing with pests. You understand pests. You see something eaten in a certain way, you know this is a cutworm. You see a leaf curling up, you know these are aphids. So over time, you get the understanding, and you find that you become even more practical than the people who studied these things. It's no longer like a theory to you, but it's practical ways in which you're understanding agriculture. So some of these things are written, and you're able to read them and see and just observe, and you just take your time to understand these things. Because one thing is, you just have to be patient with whatever comes, with whatever shows up. And even if I talk of chemicals quite a lot, and sometimes I just feel like I wish we were taught more of the conservation farming practices than these heavy duty things, use of chemicals. If we were taught, because I am an agronomist by training, we were taught of a lot of this intense kind of farming, but conservation farming is the way to go. How do we protect our soil? How do we protect whatever it is that we're growing? How do we also protect the health of the consumers that are eating the food that we're growing? And that's actually the most important thing. So composting is key. Aside composting, um, being key, feeding, use of ways like crop rotation. You break pest cycles. You also try and help your soils. You don't over plow your soil. You don't over clear your farm. So you're doing farm clearance. Leave a few trees so you have your windbreak. If a storm comes, your crops aren't completely ripped apart. So let's just find ways in which we're able to still protect life in the soil, protect our soils, and we want our farming to outlive us for generation and generation to come. So I know a lot of the agriculture that I was exposed to is the kind of harsh agriculture, but over time you kind of realize that where we are headed, we have to protect what we have. We have to protect what we're growing food in. So I have listed a number of things here, but at the end of the day, we should look more into the organic and conservation kind of practices, which is quite difficult in the midst of climate change. New pests, new phenomena are happening. and it's quite difficult in terms of a management perspective. So I don't know at this point, do we have any questions, any contributions, um, anything people would like to add on so that we have an interactive conversation? Um, Please do even type in the chat or just lift up your hands. Would be happy to hear your contributions and anything that you'd like to share. Is everybody okay so far?
Yes, okay. It's flowing.
It's flowing. Any
Yes.
questions, any contributions? So my assignment, I will take a picture of, I'll write what I need to share of. So I'll take a picture of some of my records. I'll also do the farm plan, and I'll just check in my Google Drive if my videos are still there. I'll share a link to a drive that has, let me just quickly browse through it. That has the park house where I was just doing a short tour of the park house. I don't know if I still have that content available, but let me just check quickly. Mm,